Okay, I'm doing this just real quickly. This is an addendum to 11u1. I've been thinking ever since I posted it about how am I going to explain the Anaphora, because they're really relevant here, but the topic is just too complex. Alright, you see online the HTM version of my Ephesians 1 repar stock. As you'll notice, the links change. And by the way, if you are not able to read the Greek, it's because you need to download the fonts here. So you have to go to BibleWorks.com fonts, and they're free fonts, so just download them. Then you'll be able to read the Greek. So that's the verse 3 note. I didn't mean to go there. So here's verse 3. It doesn't look as good in the HTM. I just did the automatic word conversion to HTM. I didn't reformat it. I usually write my own HTML code, but I didn't do it this time because I'm changing this document so often. And so it doesn't look as good, but in a way, it's bigger, la la la. So if you've got BibleWorks fonts installed, you'll see this as Greek. Otherwise, it's going to look like gibberish. Okay? Now, what I'm trying to explain here, and it doesn't look as good in the HTM, it looks perfect in the doc. So if you download the doc, it's not going to look so goofball. The word eudokion is just all one boxed word. This is the first anaphora. See if I can get it to just go. No, it won't do it. Of course not. This is the first anaphora in Paul's writing. I call it the Eudokian anaphora in the 150-page Ephesians 1 doc. Okay, which here is the HTM version. An anaphora is a set of phrases, or a phrase, which is used for dramatic effect multiple times. It's not only used for dramatic effect, it's used to bookend. And since Paul's doing a time meter, he's bookending the time to show a similarity between time A and time B and time C, because this anaphora is repeated 3 times. So there are 3 epics in his time poem that have similar meaning, and that way you know how to better interpret the times, especially if you were alive at that time. It would be prophetic to you, and you would know how to read the time. For us, looking at it retrospectively, it helps us understand the history through God's eyes. Alright? And better understand why church, the rapture is unpredictable. So this is the first anaphora. It's got the key words are eudokion and telematos. Now telematos all by itself is like a sub-anaphora, because every time he comes to the Eta 3 times, that's a year when an emperor actually dies, and his heir undoes what the previous emperor did. Now, in the videos I've already gone through this telematos, which signifies the death of Trajan and the accession of Hadrian. Okay, the second time it happens is down here. This is Macrinus, and that gives rise to the Severan nephews. Alright, and the third time it happens is a matter of debate with scholars, okay. Right here is 316, and that's when Diocletian dies. Now, I've done videos on all of those. Or I'm getting ready. I'm sorry, I haven't finished the video. When I get through the Constantine videos, I'll be covering this. Alright, but that's an example of anaphora. A repeated word or concept that is so close in meaning it functions like a chiasmus, like a bookend, showing parallelism. Alright? Now, this is the first official anaphora. I'm lumping the telematos in with eudokion because they always occur in pairs together. First here in verse 5, and then next in here, but he's reversed the order on purpose, and I covered why in the earlier 11 GGS videos. Okay, see, it's in reverse order. So that's a bookend between 231, okay, ending at 231, verses up here starting in 106. Okay? So then you have to evaluate, why did he bookend that time? What was the history of this time versus the other one that makes him bookend? Alright? That's the first concept. Okay, see, Bible interpretation can end up being pretty precise, especially with metered passages, because of the way they organize them. And this is something Christendom doesn't know anything about. You know, when people hear about Bible numbers, the only voice they think of are those stupid idiots who are claiming Bible codes. This has nothing to do with Bible codes. The Bible codes people wouldn't know the Bible if it bit them. That's why they're busy trying to look for, Moby Dick, the prediction of Moby Dick being written in the Bible, I mean, it's really dumb. Our second anaphora, that is birthed by the first because it's nested within. See, this starts a bookend. It ends at 231, and then it goes on again the third time it happens. I should show you that. That's our first anaphora. The third occurrence is down here at the very bottom. Well, no. Third time is right here with Constantine. All right? So that's our Eudokian anaphora in those three places. So any other anaphora are going to be nested, because this one starts the earliest up here in verse 5. Okay? And that should be ace. I always say ice because I'm thinking of Erasmian pronunciation. Booth isn't right. Erasmus isn't right. It's Attic Greek sounding, and it should be in between. That should be ace. Auton, kata, ten, Eudokian. Okay, one day I'm gonna actually practice my Greek well enough, and I will pronounce it the way I say it's supposed to be said. Okay. Anyway, but the point is, that's the first anaphora. So this one is beginning. This is the second anaphora, which I call the Epeinon anaphora, and it's beginning within. In other words, this one is birthing the next one. Okay. That's why it's worded the way it is. See, result. Ice means has an accusative of result, accusative of purpose and result. Okay. And it's kind of squinched together because I needed to make it fit in the Word doc, but that's the word epeinon. Okay. It means good report, literally, a praiseworthy report. It gets truncated to the meaning praise in English translations, but it's not just praise, it's a report of. And it has a connotation that the report itself is worthy, which is what Paul is leading up to here. Because that anaphora, which begins right here, nested within the Eudokion, comes down here. The second time is during Constantine. Alright, right here. This is just so shocking, I wanted to fall apart when I saw it. Okay? That means that we literally become His glory. We be made into. I say praise for, but the Greek is not really praise for. This is just plain genitive. He's using a case ending. He dropped the prepositions. That's Attic. That's an Attic construction. Eisepanandoxis, the praise of His glory. And it has a connotation that that's what we actually become, not just what we say. And it's an arthrus. There's not even a definite article there. This just shocks me more than I can tell you. Okay, so that's our second benchmark. Okay, so that's 334, which is being likened back up here to verse 6. Okay, sorry it's taking me so long to scroll. Here. And what's the parallel? The parallel is the Bar Kokhba rebellion, which caused Jerusalem to go down. Alright, he's paralleling that with 3 years before Constantine dies. So he's saying the going down, just as bad as. That as a result of this time period, church goes down. Well, this is when Constantine gets into power. This period from 321 to 334 is when he defeats Licinius, as you're going to see. When he defeats Licinius, and he changes his capital replete with the name New Rome and 7 hills. Shades of Revelation 17. Anybody? That's what Constantine names Constantinople. We call it Constantinople. He called it New Rome. And he made 7. He literally raised the city down, just like was done with Bar Kokhba. See, the aftermath of Bar Kokhba was that the emperor, in that case it was Hadrian, the emperor raised Jerusalem and rebuilt Aelia Capitolina during that time. Okay? And Paul is deliberately benchmarking the same kind of event with a second Anaphora here, and it was in 330 that the so-called New Rome was consecrated, but it was they first raised Byzantium. They raised the whole city. They rebuilt it to emulate the old Rome, including the 7 hills. They had to create the 7 hills with dirt. So is Revelation 17 clever or what? It's referencing not only the old Rome, but it's referencing New Rome. 300 years before it occurred. And of course, even before John did it in Revelation 17, of course this is where John's getting Revelation 17, Paul's doing it right here. Because what did Constantine think he was doing? What did the newly born Roman Catholic Church, what did they think they were doing? They thought that they were praising God's glory by what they did. Okay? Yeah, so Paul's making fun of them there, telling them, hi, by the way, God's really going to make his own, and that's the third anaphora I haven't finished explaining, his own, right up here, pro epikotas, he's going to make his own, not you, not New Rome, but instead the few, just like I said in, 11u1. Constantine actually dies right here. He doesn't even become first fruits. He dies in 337, so that's 334, 335, 336, 337. See, I told you Paul was tracking it syllable by syllable. That's the second anaphora. Okay? And it ends down here with nobody. There's not even enough believers to constitute a subgroup that Paul can meter it in submeters. Oh no. There's only the few, and those are going to result in praise his glory. See? Resulting in, now he's got the definite article. The praise. In English you'd have to stress it. When they leave it out, they're stressing quality, and when you put it in, it can be monadic, and I suspect that's what's going on here. I mean, there's only one God, so there's only one glory, right? Only one kind of glory will qualify as divine. So I'm suspecting that's a monadic. All right, so resulting in the glory, his glory, the glory of him. I mean, if we have to translate it literally, it doesn't really have the same meaning when you do that. Resulting in his glory, but the glory of him, you've got to put in the "the" in there somewhere. It won't make good English. Okay, that's where it ends. That's the last anaphora, the last anaphoric use. But it's the second anaphora in terms of order of appearance, like cast of characters in a movie. It appears second. This appears on stage first, Eudokion, then the Painon, and then it doesn't occur again until we meet our third anaphora, which starts here with proetetos, set forth. He's set forth, meaning Father. All right, in him, meaning Christ, set forth like showbread on the table in front of the Holy of Holies. This third anaphora I'm calling Temple Trio. I didn't know what else to call it. It sounded catchy. It's proeteto followed by protesin, which means showbread, temple showbread. And unfortunately in your English Bibles they just translate it as foreordained per a plan. They leave out what kind of plan it is. I submit that's anti-Semitism. It's temple showbread. It's a specific, this means temple showbread. And it comes to mean plan because you baked it every day, because, bread goes stale by the end of the day. You baked it every day, so therefore you had to have a plan for kneading it and waiting the time for it to rise, and then you had to braid it, or whatever it was they did to it. Challah, today's Jewish challah, is a distant cousin of temple showbread. All right? So you had to have a plan to make it. Yeah, and this was exactly what Diocletian was all about. Temple showbread plan in his mind. That's what he was thinking of, divine plan that he was going to create. That's what the Tetrarchy and all of his reforms and everything he did was, which Constantine continued. So our second use of the temple trio anaphora is here, protesin. The third time is pikotas, and that's the innermost anaphora. Okay? Now, Eudochian's first occurrence is back up here, as I said. So the next time you look for it, it's going to be some kind of bookend, which is right here. And then the third time, Paul substitutes, instead of Eudochian, he uses the word bolen. This is used in Isaiah 53:10 in the LXX. Okay, see how telematos is here? He's obviously substituting he could have used Eudochian here again. But see, if he did that, then telematos wouldn't line up with the death of Diocletian. Now, some scholars think that Diocletian died in 313. In Appendix 2 of this document, which, let's see if I can show that. Let's go back to the title page. I got to show you where Appendix 2 is. Appendix 2, Diocletian's death. I go through why the scholar idea of Diocletian dying in 313 is wrong. Basically, I think one of the scholars misread the Latin of Aurelius Victor. And I spent time on that here. Again, it looks much better in the Word doc, so download it. Here's that part where the scholar's name is T.D. Barnes. He's very well known and very well respected. I submit that he misread the Latin. I mean, it doesn't invalidate anything else he said. It's just, it was a mistake, it's understandable. So we go back here to verse 5. That's our first anaphora, and it ends here. It's our first bookend. It births the second anaphora here. The first Eudochian anaphora picks up again here. So you are to read the period here as parallel to the period here as far as the chronography goes. Alright? And then you've got this nested anaphora here, ending at 133, that next occurs, where was it? Oh, at Constantine here. So you're supposed to read that in parallel, and like I just said, the parallel is you have a city being destroyed and an apostate city being built on top of it in both cases. So this is not saying something nice about Constantine or New Rome, which of course, John picks up on, and that's Revelation 17. Okay, but this is only the second anaphora here. Alright, it's the third anaphora here. So this is parallel 320 to 231. Well, that's the severance. Okay, this was when the first time Catholic got used, is that period. That's our second use of the Eudochian anaphora. Here's the third use of the Eudochian anaphora, only substituting bolane to make the syllables fit. And that's when the so-called Catholic Church is actually born under Constantine. Okay, Council of Nicaea is 323, but there were plenty of councils before that. As soon as he got to power, he started getting the church underneath him. He wanted to make sure he could control it. He thought he could control them. They thought they could control him. And basically, in the end, they ended up winning. over the Caesars, because the Caesars basically became, the what do you want to call it, the slave boy of the so-called Roman Catholic Church, which was just born here. So you see why Paul's making that parallel? Okay, again, the third anaphora is ending right there, is highlighted in teal at the end of verse 11. And it's being compared with the time when Hippolytus, I hope you saw me do the bishop list video in 11T9. I spent all, nine videos of 11T9 explaining the bishop list book. Paul is paralleling that to 231, when the very term Catholic was first born, when was also first born the idea of Peter even being in Rome, and specifically being in Rome under Claudius for the bishop list of Julius Africanus and Hippolytus, which was a political ploy to get rid of Origen, masterminded by Demetrius. They weren't trying to really create a popedom, they were trying to get rid of Origen. Okay, and try to institute their own guy in the Roman, chair at that time, to win over the Severans, who were the imperial family. See how Paul's paralleling that? I mean, this is just awesome. That's the second anaphora, and then again, the second anaphora is the last one to end, down here, very lonely, all by itself. Okay? The third anaphora was Temple Trio, which began right here with proeteton, paralleled with protesine, and this is just before Constantine gets into power. Alright? Because our boy Diocletian had his own showbread plan. Okay? And it shows being set forth here. Yeah, this is the crisis of the 3rd century. This is what Diocletian couldn't have risen to power without it. This was just Roman civil war. That was what was set forth as far as Rome was concerned. But meanwhile, God's setting forth a diaspora so Christians can get out of town, avoid the crisis of the 3rd century, be in the hinterlands, and therefore be set apart to God. See all that wry wordplay that Paul's playing on history? Alright? And so, the second time it occurs, protesine, again, just before persecution. So that those inheriting, in other words, paying attention to Paul's wording here, and there had to have been some. There was a great deal of awareness that something was about to go wrong during this time. Okay? They got out of Dodge. They got out of Rome. They went to Gaul or Britain or Parthia again. Yeah. God's temple showbread plan baked them in advance. And so they weren't part of the persecution because they weren't in the power centers. They weren't in Antioch, they weren't in Alexandria, they weren't in Rome, they weren't in Carthage, where all the so-called holy Christians were. The ones that we call church fathers that are really church retards. They weren't in town. Because God had his own plan. Got him out of Dodge. Meanwhile, Diocletian's got his own plan that he's developing, starting with the Price Edict in 301. And then after that you got, starting in 303, 2 syllables later, you got the Great Persecution. Okay, which was kind of sporadically enforced, but it was enforced. Alright? And then we have our last occurrence of the Eudochian anaphora. So as you can see, the Temple Trio anaphora is ensconced within the Eudochian anaphora. The Epiphanes anaphora started birthed from the Eudochian anaphora back here in verse 6. Okay? This is where it's birthed, because here's the first Eudochian anaphora. Alright? But the Epiphanes anaphora goes onward. Here's the end of the Eudochian anaphora, the third time it's used. The second time the Epiphanes anaphora is used is right here outside of the Eudochian anaphora. So it encloses the end of the temple trio anaphora and goes on. So as you can see, I hope you're following me. This is very complicated. The Epiphanes anaphora ends up being bookended here and here, which means that, again, of course, that's obvious. Here's when people get out of Dodge yet again. Why? Because Constantine's moving the capital of the empire to Byzantium. So that fostered an awful lot of change. Anybody who was in Rome now starts to get out. Either they're going with him or they're going against him. All right? So this is another exodus, which of course explains why it's paired with the previous Epiphanes. All right? That's the second use of it. The previous Epiphanes was up here in verse 6, which was the lead-in to the destruction of Jerusalem. You see? They're both lead-ins. And they're both lead-ins to Exodus, to an Exodus. Alright? Because he actually dedicates, it's 330. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Yeah, that's really kind of sad. He dedicates the 330 for his own good report, but not God's glory is left out. Sorry. Paul is that witty. This is just like Aristophanes does his plays. Or Euripides, or, it's got that same subtle satire to it. Okay? So now Proepikotas is inside this bookend, which is an Exodus bookend, and this bookend, which is only done by the Holy Spirit. Isn't that cool? Can you see it all? See? Here's the Epiphanes. Here's the Epiphanes. In between, Proepikotas, totally outside Rome. Poor Constantine doesn't even qualify as first fruits. He dies right here. Of course, all of his kids don't qualify either, because within 6 months after he dies, they kill each other over whether God is one or three. I'll be covering that in future videos. Okay, so now why did I just take you through, 27 minutes? Oh, I thought it was going to be short. Why did I take you through 27 minutes of this confusing stuff? Because you're going to have to read the document to understand why this is so important. Paul meters the timing of these anaphora themselves, within themselves. He meters them. And you know what he does when he meters them? He ties them in meter, using the most sophisticated math I've ever seen, back to Abraham. Now, I got tipped off. I saw him do this, but I didn't understand why. And then when I did the Mary Magnificat videos, Mary had done the same thing. Of course, she's speaking before Paul writes. She did the same thing with her first two date lines. She took the 35 syllables and the 42 syllables that she used as date lines to tell you when she was talking and how old she was. She used those two numbers to create a matrix of dates, a calendar, going all the way back to David at Hebron. She's using the same style that Daniel had used, that Isaiah had used, that Moses had used. And Paul is picking up on her, but of course, he's using these anaphora also to do that. And I ended up having to create charts of what these anaphora mean. And I believe they start, let me show you where it is. By the time you see this document, it might not be the same page number. I had to start doing what's called an anaphora chronology. It's my appendix 1. How Paul mates the anaphora to history. And it starts, I think that's page 142 in the Word doc. Okay, it's Appendix 1, so you can find out whatever page number it is. It goes all the way on. This continues for something like 20 pages minimum. It just goes on and on and on and on, the math. Okay, how he's tying it to history, why he's doing the parallels that he's doing. Okay, and I use real history so that you can see what the parallels are. Again, this is better formatted in the Word doc. Okay, and how he pairs up his numbers and the meaning of the Anaphora to history. And of course, if you see anything you don't agree with, let me know. But it took me 20 pages, and I'm not done yet. Because somewhere in here, he's telling us how to do an Anno Domini accounting. And his Anno Domini looks very much like the Roman AUC calendar. I think it's different by a year or two. I'm still checking that math. Okay? And so I go on and on and on. I'm sorry for pages, because all of his Anaphora link up to history. And that's what I guess I'd ask you to do. I'll be posting up the 11u2 video sometime next week, or maybe on the 28th. But between now and then, I would ask you to review Appendix 1. Okay? If you can stomach it. See? 336, Constantine dies. This is the heart and soul of what Paul was pointing at in his use of the meter in Ephesians 1:3-14 was Constantine. And like I said before, I didn't really know that much about Constantine. The guy never really interested me much. Anything after Post Commodus, I really didn't care. But when I saw this meter in Paul, I had to. Okay? So if you want, if you're willing, before the 28th, try to read Appendix 1, either here online, as you can see. That's the link name, Anaphora Mates History. Or else read it in the Word doc, where it's just called Appendix 1. And see what you get out of it. Just see the intense math, the intense focus. He's considering this period with Constantine, how do you want to call it, a hub change of history. So much so that he hubs time going all the way back from Abraham, all the way forward to the millennium that was then scheduled, because he's writing before 94 AD, so millennium still could have happened in 94. He's hubbing this to both points, both endpoints. I'm so shocked I can't see straight. And of course, like I say, you see anything wrong, let me know. And if the text looks kind of funny, let me know. This is still a draft. I'm still working out the details. I only learned of it like a year ago. I learned of the meter 2 years ago, but I only understood this Anaphora thing about a year ago. So, let me know if you got problems. And I apologize for all this complication, but I have to give you the source material and lots of data, because Christendom doesn't know anything about this. And so the natural question is, well, why should I listen to Brain Out? And I agree, you shouldn't listen to me. The information, however, has its own competence. I'm basically learning it and writing it down. And then you decide for yourself how much time you're supposed to spend on it.